Wouldn't it be great if someone handed us a guidebook explaining the rules of life clearly? Wouldn't that save us a lot of time and eliminate the need for guesswork? Professor Jordan B. Peterson believes there is a simple handbook for life, or at least, he wrote one. This summary will introduce you to Professor Jordan B. Peterson's rules for living the best life possible and provide some surprising truths. Through this summary, you'll learn three things. 1. What lobsters can teach us about confidence. 2. How flowers are related to finding meaning in life. 3. What skateboards tell us about human nature. Rule 1. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Have you ever heard the term pecking order? It's commonly used in conversations. But do you know where it originated? The term was coined by Norwegian zoologist Thorleif Skjeldrup Eby, who studied the behavior of chickens in coops in the 1920s, observing a clear hierarchy when it came to feeding time. He noticed that the strongest, healthiest chickens ate first, while the weaker, more timid ones had to wait for scraps. This ensured that the strong chickens maintained their advantage, while the others became weaker. The same applies to other animals. For example, lobsters display similar behaviors, whether in captivity or the wild. This proves that their sense of hierarchy is innate rather than learned. Scientists have observed lobsters fighting for the best shelters, which actually changes their biology. For instance, victorious lobsters have higher serotonin levels. Meanwhile, those that lose repeatedly experience a drop in serotonin. This hormonal advantage makes the winning lobsters stronger and more confident in their posture, while their defeated rivals become more withdrawn and fearful. You might recognize this behavior in humans as well. Those who frequently succeed are encouraged by their string of victories, which fuels their confidence to take on new challenges. In fact, this confidence helps them achieve further success. Similarly, people who are depressed or feel that life is unfair are often more risk-averse and approach situations as if they already know they will fail. This becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, reinforcing their pessimistic worldview. So, if you're trying to climb the ranks in life or break out of a negative cycle, the best advice we can give you is, think like a lobster. Adopt a confident posture, tell the world you're a winner, and keep pretending until you make it. Rule 2. Treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. This might sound counterintuitive. After all, shouldn't we be saying to love others more than yourself? While that's true, we often care for others better than we care for ourselves. That's because we are overly aware of our own flaws, and this awareness can lead to self-hatred. When we immerse ourselves in reasons to believe we're inadequate, we begin to think we don't deserve care, kindness, or positivity. As a result, we tend to focus all our positive energy on those we love, especially our partners and pets, while neglecting ourselves. Eastern philosophy acknowledges these toxic patterns through teachings on the duality of nature. The yin-yang symbol represents both light and dark, implying that each contains at least a part of the other, and neither can exist without the other. Eastern philosophy also teaches that harmony can only be achieved when both sides are included, seeking a healthy balance between them. This is illustrated by the example of parents and their children. Suppose a parent only wants the best for their child and tries to shield them from anything negative. However, if they overprotect and prevent their child from learning about the world or exploring new experiences, the child will suffer in the opposite extreme. Instead of being protected from negative influences, the child will feel stifled and rebel in more extreme ways to regain a sense of freedom. Both extremes are unhealthy. So, when you seek balance in your own life, remember not to go too far toward the dark or too extreme in your efforts to be perfect. Imperfection and chaos are inevitable, so don't waste your time and energy fighting against what is bound to happen. It's important not to focus solely on what makes you happy. While it's fun to pursue things that make you feel warm and comfortable, these things don't foster personal growth. So instead, focus on what's best for you, just as a parent would do what's best for their child. A child may not want to eat vegetables or go to bed on time, but a parent will ensure that they do because it's good for their health. Therefore, in your adult life, set goals and direction, then make healthy decisions to help you achieve those goals. Rule 3. Make friends with people who want the best for you. It's a fact that our vocabulary is influenced by the words our friends use. This isn't surprising. because the more time you spend with someone, the more they affect you. While mimicking someone's speech patterns is harmless, you should also be mindful of whether their toxic habits or traits might influence you. We often choose friends based on surface-level criteria, like shared interests or a common sense of humor. However, we don't always carefully consider who our closest friends are or reflect on the consequences of their bad habits impacting our own growth. The truth is, negative people and poor decisions in life can drag down those around them. Unfortunately, this influence can easily occur in both your professional and personal life. For example, managers and professors often think that putting an underperforming person on a team with high achievers will help them improve and encourage them to mimic their peers' best practices. However, studies show that the opposite is more likely to happen, with successful teammates becoming less productive under the negative influence of the underperformer. That's why it's essential to surround yourself with people who are positive and cultivate good habits in your life. Remember that practicing discernment doesn't mean being judgmental. Instead of rejecting potential friends for minor differences, like style or socioeconomic background, actively seek out people who will help you make positive changes. The beauty of this friendship is mutual benefit. A good friend won't let you wallow in regret or speak negatively about yourself. They'll call you out on toxic behaviors. In turn, you'll do the same for them, as both of you work to improve yourselves and the world around you. Friendship, in this way, helps you become the best version of yourself, literally. So choose your friends wisely. Rule 4. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Do you often compare your success to that of others? Whether it's to motivate yourself with thoughts like, "At least I did better than her," or to discourage yourself with remarks like, "I'll never win an award like she did." These comparisons are toxic. That's because comparison kills progress. It's important to clarify that comparison and self-criticism are not the same. Self-criticism is healthy to a certain extent, as it helps you realistically assess your flaws and identify areas where you can improve. This is the motivation that drives us toward a brighter and more successful future. But criticism becomes ugly when distorted through the lens of comparison. Instead of asking yourself what you can do to improve, comparison leads you to judge yourself by someone else's standards. This outlook removes the gradual accumulation of progress and replaces it with a black and white filter of success and failure. And when we see that we're not as successful as others, we conclude that we have failed. However, the truth remains. If you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, you can clearly see all the aspects of life and acknowledge the small details that define your personal growth. Who knows? Your colleague may have been promoted before you, but perhaps you're focusing on developing family relationships instead of prioritizing your career because that's what suits you. You should stop comparing yourself to others and instead, evaluate yourself based on your past achievements. Are you better than you were yesterday? Do you want to be better tomorrow than you are today? If the answer is yes, and you're making efforts to do so, then you're on the right path. Because when you compare the present to the past, you'll recognize that you're growing in ways and at a pace that's best for you. So assess your personal progress by standards that apply to you. And as you evaluate your development, think like a home appraiser. You'll analyze everything from the ground up, determining whether the issue is a cosmetic fix or a structural flaw. Make a list of everything you see that needs improvement and tackle them. Improving yourself is like renovating a house. The best part is that when you focus on becoming the person you want to be, you'll no longer have time to think about comparing yourself to others. Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. One of life's most challenging tasks is figuring out how to raise children properly. Because our children enter the world as blank slates, we're often paralyzed by the question, what should we write on those who will shape future generations? Jordan Peterson argues that the starting point for answering this question is acknowledging the innate selfishness of human nature. We all know how mean kids can be to each other. Almost everyone has experienced bullying as a child. So what happens if our main concern is simply raising kids to be kind? Peterson asserts that nurturing kindness requires more than just being friends with your children. In fact, successfully raising children requires you to accept the risk that sometimes your kids won't like you. While that may sting a little, take time to think about how this plays out. After all, if your focus is on being your child's friend, you won't set many rules. Instead, your job is to ensure they are always happy and having fun. But that won't help your child become a well-adjusted, likable adult. So, while setting boundaries and sticking to them may not be fun, remember that you're doing your child a huge favor. Teaching them life lessons early is far better than letting them learn them from the harshness of society. Therefore, if you want to help your child become the best they can be, here are Peterson's top tips for successful parenting. Step 1. Avoid over-restricting rules. While rules are necessary, if you have too many, your child will become frustrated and feel surrounded by obstacles. Instead of micromanaging their life, focus on practical and helpful rules, like showing respect, kindness, and never using violence unless in self-defense. Remember that these rules will shape your child's core values. Honestly, would you prefer a loving and polite child, or a little monster that obeys without having their own personality? Next step, don't be authoritarian. Ensure that rules and punishments are clearly laid out. This helps children understand the consequences of their actions and requires you to have a deep understanding of your child. Know who your child is, when to teach with words, and when to apply appropriate punishment, like taking away video games for a week. Step 3. Parents must be united. Don't let your children sow discord between parents to get what they want. Support your partner, even if they make mistakes. Lovingly acknowledging errors and working together to correct them is the key to a happy family. Rule 6. Life is not fair. Why do bad things happen to good people? Is one of life's eternal questions, and to this day, we don't have a complete answer. It's often easy to blame injustice on others, whether at a personal or global level. However, that's not the right response when faced with suffering or negative temptations. While it's natural to react strongly in desperate situations, avoiding overreactions is essential to maintaining a healthy life. However, Russian writer Leo Tolstoy didn't see it this way. He believed that the world's injustice weighed so heavily on the human mind that only 4 responses were possible: naive ignorance, hedonism, suicide, or a determination to fight despite it all. But is that really all there is? Some have chosen to accept this bleak worldview, as evidenced by the tragedies of mass school shootings in the U.S. By June 2016, there had been over 1,000 mass shootings in the U.S., where attackers killed 4 or more people before committing suicide. While this paints a grim picture, it should not lead us to abandon hope or conclude that humanity is inherently evil. This lesson leads to Peterson's 6th rule: take responsibility for your own life and actions. Before condemning the world, follow the philosophy of writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who refused to be crushed by life's cruelty despite witnessing firsthand the horrors of Soviet labor camps. Solzhenitsyn learned from fighting the Nazis in World War II that while life may be rife with injustice, humans can still refuse to be beaten down by it. Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. Have you ever heard the story of the monkey who got its hand stuck in a jar of cookies? The monkey could put its hand in the jar, but when it tried to pull it out while holding a cookie, it couldn't. The monkey had to choose between letting go of the cookie to free itself, or holding onto the reward and staying stuck. Humans often behave the same way, getting caught up in the temptation to chase what they want, even when it leads to negative consequences. While fleeting desires may bring short-term satisfaction, indulging in them doesn't make us better people. Peterson argues that we should pursue sacrifice instead of instant gratification. Sacrifice allows us to achieve greater things in the future by giving up short-term pleasures in the present. This isn't new. We all know that to succeed, we must sacrifice easy things. For example, we often sacrifice time to work and earn money, or give up pleasures for a more comfortable life later. However, Peterson encourages sacrifice that brings long-term benefits not just for ourselves but for others. Instead of chasing selfish pleasures, consider spending some time making a difference in someone else's life. This not only changes your negative worldview, but also helps you become a better person. Rule 8. Tell the truth, or at least, don't lie. We all tend to lie to ourselves in one way or another, whether it's convincing ourselves that we'll achieve something without doing anything to reach the goal, or deluding ourselves about our flaws. We're all liars, at least to some degree. French psychologist Alfred Adler called this habit the lies of life, defining them as the things we say and do to achieve what we think we want. The phrase, what we think we want, is key because it acknowledges the fact that we deceive ourselves into desiring things that aren't really good for us. This is also true of the ability to convince ourselves that we already know everything there is to know. This is a particularly dangerous lie because if we believe we already have the proper tools for self-improvement, we lose the ability to keep learning and growing. Thus, Peterson's eighth rule for life is, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Increase your self-awareness and learn to recognize when you're lying to yourself. Then, learn how to correct those lies. Reassessing your goals and personal truth can help you put your life back on a more honest and meaningful track. Rule 9. Engage in healthy argument. If you use social media, you'll know that it can become a hotbed of conflict and harsh criticism. People often insult and attack one another, spewing negativity at strangers. Unfortunately, this behavior has become a defining feature of our society today, and it's a far cry from the true meaning of healthy debate. Peterson advises that we reassert our ability to engage in genuine dialogue, returning to the philosophy of ancient Greek thinkers. They understood that challenging others' ideas respectfully doesn't equate to personal attacks. This method of argument is the ninth life lesson from Professor Peterson. Listen to what others are saying and believe you can learn something from them. Rather than treating conversations as a competition to prove you're right and the other person is wrong, seek out reasons to listen. You may not agree with someone else, but that doesn't mean you have to insult them. Even in disagreement, you should approach every conversation by listening and then summarizing what you heard in your own words. Rephrasing what others have said is a great way to ensure you've accurately understood them and shows that you care enough to listen genuinely. Rule 10. Be precise in your speech. Life can become very messy, and our relationships with others can be even more complicated. However, we can reduce some of this chaos by acknowledging that sometimes the reason we don't understand things is that we only pay attention to the details that matter to us or make sense to us. While this is a natural human tendency, it can make the world more chaotic if we don't strive to see the bigger picture. This is why we need the 10th rule: use precise language. When facing the complexity of the world, it's crucial to increase clarity by using precise language, as it helps break down complex concepts into simple, understandable information. By simplifying situations through accurate terminology, we can establish order in our lives, whether the problem is a broken car or a sick body. The same applies to relationships. If your feelings are hurt or you're trying to resolve a conflict, precise language can help you express the issue clearly and honestly. Say specifically what's bothering you, and by doing so, you can pave the way for resolving the problem instead of creating more misunderstandings. Rule 11. Don't stifle human nature. Modern society is trying to correct a culture of injustice, but sometimes these efforts go overboard, making it difficult to distinguish between good and bad. For example, the effort to combat toxic masculinity sometimes leads to a complete stigmatization of men and masculinity. That's not the solution. While it's true that men have behaved poorly for centuries and have used their power to manipulate and discriminate against women, people of color, and many other groups, we shouldn't unfairly condemn all men. Demonizing an entire gender cannot create a just society. Instead, Peterson argues that we should focus on reconciling our differences to build a better future. Many men and women have aggressive or dominant traits, but these characteristics aren't necessarily bad. When properly guided and encouraged, they can bring significant benefits to society. Peterson illustrates this point with the example of skateboarders. He once observed a group of teenagers skateboarding skillfully on a university campus, showing agility and balance. However, because societal rules deemed skateboarding unsafe, city officials decided to ban it on campus. This inadvertently criminalized an activity that actually required dedication, strength, and a spirit of adventure. Peterson argues that this was a mistake, and it applies to any situation where we stigmatize a group simply because of their outward behavior. Instead of making sweeping judgments, like saying all men are bad, we should be open to new perspectives and talents, even if they differ from our own. Rule 12. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. Life can be full of sorrow, but it's important to remember that life is also filled with joy. The main difference is that while sorrow often rises up and overwhelms us directly, Finding joy requires a little more effort to notice. Professor Peterson has a very personal experience with this, as his daughter has struggled with severe arthritis since she was just 6 years old. This degenerative condition has caused her extreme pain, requiring constant medication and numerous surgeries to replace joints. If you feel that life is unfair when an innocent child has to endure such suffering, you're right. There's nothing fair about it. However, Peterson argues that such moments should only strengthen our determination to seek out the good. This is why his 12th rule is: take time to enjoy the small pleasures that life offers. He shares that despite being deeply affected by his daughter's pain, he's always grateful that after years of suffering, she finally found a physiotherapist who could help her move and live a more normal life. Although she hasn't fully recovered and more complications may arise, he remains grateful for the small joys in her life and tries to keep both of them positive. So, his advice to readers is to avoid being bogged down by sorrow and pay attention to the little things that can bring joy, such as petting a stray cat you happen to meet on the street.